Hey everyone, my name is Aaliyah and welcome to my channel. So today's video is a part 2 to my birth story, so if you hadn't had a chance to check out part 1, then I suggest you do that before watching this video. So we left off with me in the car during a flash flood. At this point, I'm 37 weeks pregnant and I had just called to reschedule my prenatal visit. They asked me if I wanted to reschedule for Tuesday or if I wanted to keep my appointment for the following Thursday. And for a moment I considered keeping it on Thursday because that was following along with my gestational timeline. So I would be exactly 38 weeks of following Thursday. So I got out of the flood safe and sound. My father-in-law was eventually able to come and get me when the water went down a little bit. It was a really long 8-hour day, but I was fine overall, just tired. That weekend, I was with my mom. I was shopping at IKEA. I was getting some stuff ready for the baby. And while we were at IKEA, I did have to sit down quite a lot, but at this point I was 37 weeks pregnant. So I was just like, okay, I'm 37 weeks pregnant. Like, obviously I'm gonna be tired out and I'm gonna be needing to sit down more. But then whenever we got home, I did vomit and I had back pain. But again, I was just like, I am big and pregnant. I was walking around a lot today. I've had nausea my whole pregnancy. This isn't anything new to me. And I had the pain in my rib, so I was just like, these are all just normal events of late stage pregnancy. So my mom and Parsa gave me a back massage and I felt better and whatever and just went on with the weekend. Then I went in for my appointment on Tuesday and it was late September and it's pretty hot in Houston still around that time. So it was pretty hot, but it wasn't significantly hot. And one thing that stood out to me is that when I got into the midwife's office and I was waiting in the waiting area, I was drenched in sweat, which was really strange to me because I wasn't even hot, but my whole sides were like covered in sweat. And I was feeling kind of like I had a loss of breath. I was just trying to like kind of relax. I didn't feel anything strange. I didn't feel any pain. I just remember I was like, man, I'm like really sweating a lot. Like, this is strange. I've never experienced this my whole pregnancy. Again, I was just like, you know what? I have to walk a really long way to get to my appointments. So I'm probably just tired out from being big and pregnant and walking so far, and I was kind of in a rush. Now that I'm looking back on it, I realized that I didn't start sweating until I was in the waiting room, and it was like 30 minutes after I was in the waiting room. Then I remember I started like sweating at the sides, and I was like, that's kind of strange because it's not hot in here. I don't feel like I'm tired out or anything. I'm just sitting in this chair. So of course, when I went back into the room, I immediately told the nurse, I said, hey, like I'm feeling kind of short of breath and I'm like sweating really profusely at the sides. Like, and I showed her my dress and I was like, I'm just like covered in sweat. I just don't understand. I'm not hot or anything like that. And so she was like, okay, I'll make a note and the midwife will see what's going on when she checks you out. So the midwife came in and she was the same one that checked Esson to see if he was head down. And the appointment was going really normal. She took my vitals, and at that point, I was actually feeling a lot better and I wasn't sweating anymore. And my vitals were all fine and normal. She did the Doppler like we did at every appointment. And right towards the end of her listening to Esson's heartbeat, she noticed a dip. So she said, you know what? That's not usual for him. He's usually always above 130, and he was down in like the 120s. So she was like, he's never had that happen before, so let's go ahead and just set you up for a fetal stress test. So she took me to the room where they do the fetal stress tests and they got me set up and everything was going fine. And I remember thinking, man, I wish I would have got lunch before I came here because this appointment's taking way longer than it usually does, because usually I was only there for about 30 minutes and at this point I'd already been there for about an hour. Then when she told me, you'll have to stay on the fetal stress test for an hour until you can go home. And I was just thinking, okay, what will I get on the way home? Where can I stop? Because it was going to be traffic time because it was around like 2 something at this point. And I was thinking, okay, there's going to be traffic on the way home. So where can I stop on the way to get lunch? Because I'm so hungry. And my phone was at like 5%. So I said, let me go ahead and text the family in the family group chat and let them know that I'm here doing a fetal stress test and give them the address in case my phone dies and something happens and they can't get in contact with me, they'll at least know where I'm at. So I sent a quick text. I told them, hey, they need to monitor Ehsan's heart. It was a little bit lower than usual today. So they put me on a fetal stress test. I'll be here for an hour. My phone's at 5%. Here's the address of where I'm at. So after about 10 minutes, I was actually taking a recording of Ehsan's heartbeat because I was like, oh, you know, I haven't gotten a chance to record his heartbeat. I would really like to be able to have a recording of his heartbeat. So I was recording it and I was just like so happy that I was able to get that. And then right after I turned the video off because my phone was low on battery, so I said, okay, don't want to like waste too much battery recording. The machine started to beep. I remember I looked up and I saw his heart rate go from like 115 and then it dropped down to like 105. And then at that point, a nurse rushed in and she said, you know, just try to like change positions. Maybe the position you're in is causing distress. So we tried changing my position and his heart rate kept dropping, and I remember looking back up and it was in the 80s, and then a bunch of nurses rushed in at this point. They're asking me, you know, are you feeling any contractions? Are you feeling these contractions? And I said, no, I'm not feeling anything. It was also very sudden, and they were just asking me a bunch of questions and talking to each other, and I was trying to make sense of what they were saying so I could understand what was going on. They were putting me in a wheelchair, trying to get me down to labor and delivery, and I just remember like one of the midwives was like, I'm gonna check your cervix, and then she was like, she just did it, and I was just like, oh, okay, like what the heck is going on? I remember her saying like, oh, she's only 1 centimeter dilated. So they took me down to labor and delivery. And like in the midst of all that, I'm like, obviously it went from a very like normal, calm moment to like all of a sudden like 10 people around me banging me into doors, trying to get me into labor delivery. I didn't know what was happening, a lot of commotion going on around me. And then I was like, on top of it, I was thinking, oh my God, like my phone is about to die. Like, am I even gonna be able to call Parsa to like tell him to come here? So they get me down to labor and delivery, and I'm trying to stay calm, but they're asking me for like my credit card and my insurance card, and I'm like trying to call Parsa, and everything's in my purse. I'm trying to dig through my purse while staying calm and like trying to listen to what's going on. And finally, like I tell the midwife, I'm like, can you can go through my purse, it's fine. Like you go through my purse and like find it, because like I could not find it. Obviously, I was in a bit of distress, so I was like not be able to focus like at the card. So then I was like trying to call Parsa. I'm on the phone with him and I'm like, I'm not in labor, but you need to come to the hospital. And they were asking me a bunch of questions, and so I handed the phone over to the midwife so she could talk to him. And I remember her just saying, you know, just come calmly, your wife is fine, everything's fine, just get here safely, drive safely, and just come here as soon as you can. So they were able to get Ehsan stable. So they said they were gonna keep me overnight to do a fetal stress test on Ehsan. And they also sent in an order for an ultrasound. At that point, Parsa had gotten there. He had called everyone on the way to the hospital and was like, Aaliyah's in labor. He was confused about what was going on. He was like in the middle of work, so like whenever I called from the hospital, it was like, you know, I told him that they brought me down to labor and delivery, but I think he just took that as like, oh my God, she's having the baby. So he called all of our family members and told them. I informed him what happened and that I was gonna be staying overnight. He called his family and was letting them know that like I wasn't in labor, and was asking them just to bring some stuff for me for overnight because I didn't have my hospital bag. So then they came in to do the ultrasound on Ehsan, and we found out a few things. We found out that he was in fact breech. He was laying sideways with his head lodged in my rib. That's why I was having the pain. And then his feet were over here and his butt was down here. And he was actually holding on to his little feet, which I thought was really cute. But he was just holding himself in this little U-shaped position. We also found out that I was very, very low on amniotic fluid. So the low range is like a 5 and I was at a 2. We also found out that his umbilical cord was really, really long. They said all of these factors, the low amniotic fluid, the breech position, the long cord, there's a lot of factors going on that makes this environment unsafe for him. And I was having contractions and they were causing a lot of distress on him because of the low amniotic fluid. I still don't understand how my amniotic fluid got so low because I didn't have any abnormal discharge. I didn't have any cramping or anything to indicate that my amniotic fluid was low. The only thing that has any significance to me is the back pain and the vomiting that I had the previous Thursday. But other than that, I really don't know. I still don't know what was the cause of it. So after that, the doctor came in and informed me that I was going to need a C-section that night. And I remember Parsa pleading to postpone it until the next day because I hadn't eaten anything. She told us there was no way we could wait, that it was too much of a risk, that Ehsan was at risk of being stillborn. And when I first heard that, like, I just don't think it just didn't feel real at all. So I was like, okay. As soon as she left the room, I just broke down and started crying. I was so sad. I never would have planned or expected doing a C-section. I was like, you know, I'm young, I'm healthy, and I've had a healthy pregnancy. Although, you know, I did have HG, but it's not something that's unhealthy, it's just a symptom of pregnancy. It was really scary to think about the fact that if I had chosen to keep my appointment for Thursday, Ehsan might not be here, and I would have never known because I didn't feel anything. I didn't feel like anything was off, and it might have been too late by the time I realized that I felt like something was off. I felt so confused, and I felt like my body betrayed me. So that was around 4:30 when the surgeon came in. And then I remember I asked the nurse, you know, can I take a shower before the surgery? And she said, yeah, you know, do you want to take a shower now? And I said, no, let me rest for about 15 more minutes and then I'll go and take a shower. And in that time, somebody had come in for me to fill some forms for the surgery. And I sat up to fill out the forms. And then the machine started dinging again. And everyone rushed in and started wheeling me off to the OR. So much commotion, so much sound, and I remember I was just praying and trying to focus on my breathing, and I was so scared, but I just kept praying to God, like, please just let me stay calm so I can breathe, so I can focus on saving my baby. I remember the surgeon said, everybody be quiet, I need a moment with the patient, and she just said, you know, take a deep breath, and I was focusing on my breathing, and then they were able to get Ehsan stable, and I remember the nurse in front of me, she told me, your baby's safe, mama, it's gonna be okay, and I felt so relieved. And then so they were prepping me for the spinal block, and I remember I was like, I have to get this off my chest, and I was holding on to my nurse's shoulders in front of me, and I looked her in the eyes and I said, I'm so scared. And she looked at me with such kindness and she was like, I know, but it's gonna be okay. I'm gonna be right here with you. The spinal block was like nothing I could have ever expected. Like, it was not what I expected at all. I remember the lidocaine really burned. I didn't really respond badly to the medication, but like it wasn't like I was just laying there in calmness. I was shaking, I felt like I was gonna throw up, I felt like I was about to choke on my tongue. And Ehsan was like up there really far in there, like in my rib too, so they really had to like reach in there and like grab him. I could feel like the pulling and the tugging of them like pulling him from my rib. Parsa was so amazing during my C-section. I remember him telling me, you're a Viking warrior princess, which is not what I would have expected to be my mantra during my birthing experience. And it's so funny because I remember I was talking to my mom like 2 days before, and she was like, you know, what's going to be your mantra during birth? And I was like, no, I really don't know. But now I definitely know that it's, from my experience with Aslan at least, it was definitely warrior. And I would have never thought that Parsa would have been the one to find my mantra. Felt like forever waiting for them to pull him out. They took me in at 5:17 p.m. and at 5:48 Aslan was in this world. And the hardest part of my C-section wasn't the pain or the commotion or the scariness of surgery itself, but the fact that I had to wait and I could see him and I couldn't hold him. And I just remember looking over at him in his little bed and wanting to hold him so badly. And I couldn't even cry because I was worried I would make myself throw up or I would end up not being able to breathe or something, and then they would have to put me under. I was like so worried about not being able to see him. When they finally brought him over to me, it was such a bittersweet feeling because I wanted just to be able to just hold him comfortably, and I couldn't because I was laying down and I was shaking like a fish, and I wanted to nurse him. It was definitely so different from what I anticipated it being like the first time I held him, just because there was still so much going on and they were still operating on me. It was like pretty hard for me to breathe. I wish I would have researched a bit about C-sections and kind of asked my care provider what was allowed during my C-section. Like I didn't know if I could take pictures, didn't know if I could nurse him, so definitely like I wish I would have just been informed about it instead of being like there's no way I'm gonna have a C-section. I remember the following days after having him, I would just hold his tiny little body in my hands and I would think about how if I hadn't made that appointment for Tuesday, if I had left it on Thursday, I may have never gotten to see the color of his eyes or heard his little cry. And I remember feeling kind of scared of my own body, like you made him and then you hurt him. I had no idea that anything was wrong. And in a matter of hours, everything changed. It took me a while not to feel angry with my body and to not feel like my body tried to kill my baby. I'm definitely working on regaining that trust and that confidence in myself and knowing that this was just a very rare and specific occasion. I did everything right. God was looking out for me and that it turned out the way that it needed to be and that I was meant to go in on Tuesday. That's where I should trust myself, that I made the right choice. I could have chosen to go in on Thursday, but my instinct told me to go on Tuesday and I followed that instinct. So that's kind of my takeaway. I probably should have listened to my instinct a little bit more because I didn't feel like he was head down, and I took the midwife's word for it and I was just like, you know, she knows better than me. And that just wasn't the case. It's not her fault. It's not her fault. It was an honest mistake. But I should have just been like, you know, I know my body, I know what it feels like, so let's just do the ultrasound. And maybe if we would have done the ultrasound at 36 weeks, we might have caught on that my amniotic fluid was dipping or that he wasn't head down. Maybe we could have done more monitoring or something. I really don't try to think too much about the what ifs because I can't change what happened. But I'm definitely working on knowing in the future that I have that feeling that I should listen to it and it won't do any harm. This was definitely not something easy for me to share because it is a very vulnerable subject for me in a lot of ways. But I am really proud of how far I've come and how much progress I have made and how much healing I've done, and making this video definitely made me realize how much I've grown in the last year. The first time I tried to make this video was a lot harder than it was this time. I was kind of wondering about how much healing I really have done and if I really have made progress, and sitting down here today and being able to talk about the story without completely breaking down makes me realize that I have healed a lot and I am proud of myself for that. Thank you so much for listening, and if you've had any experiences like what I experienced during my pregnancy or my delivery, I hope that by sharing my story you feel less alone. And until next time.